Hello again. I'm Bill Fox, and this program is about East Brunswick. With me is our Director of Finance in East Brunswick, L. Mason Neely, known to most people as Lou. Hello, Lou. How are you?
Good evening, Mayor, and it's good to be here.
Good. It's good to have you here. Lou, we're going to spend the next few minutes of time of this program talking about what you do and some other things. But before we do that, I'd like to ask you, how does one become a finance officer, and what kind of training did you have to do that?
Well, there's generally two ways that the finance officers in the state of New Jersey arrive at where they are. Mine was almost by default. I went to work for the State Department of Treasury and was extremely unhappy with not being productive. An awful lot of time just sitting, waiting for work. And when I finished with a master's degree from Wharton School, why, I had done some revenue estimates, at which time Ken Gibson had just been elected mayor. And somehow my name had remained on those estimates, and I was called up and said, would you consider being budget director for the city of Newark? I looked at it and said, wow, that'd be a challenge. And I said yes. I took that job and found myself working about 12 to 16 hours a day. And after 2 years, I came home and my wife said, you're not here. You're in that city all the time, and you're never with me. We may as well not be married. And I began to realize that I had such a commitment to doing something there that it was time to change. And at that time, why, Mayor Walling was looking for a finance officer for East Brunswick. I came and said, I'll stay 2 years and resolve your Jamesburg Park problem, and I'm going to go to the private sector. And in fact, I came here with that master's from Wharton, and I've enjoyed it. You've allowed me a lot of creativity, and I've stayed for now going on the 13th year.
2 long years, right?
2 long years.
What kind of program were you in at Wharton?
It was a Master's of Public Administration that mixed with their Master's of Business Administration, and it was out of the same school.
What functions do you have as Director of Finance?
Well, I have a whole range of responsibilities. Obviously, the fiduciary responsibilities, which deal with the billing and collecting and paying of bills and paying of employees, which deal with the everyday functions. But also the capital formation. A community that's growing like it is, we have a lot of money that's spent on roads and sewers, and the addressing of the capital markets through the accessing of borrowed funds to pay for those projects is one of my functions. Also, the water utility. I've spent a lot of time with the water utility, and that's come out of the billing and collection function. And then construction inspection. Now that's an interesting one.
Yes, I know how construction inspection got in there, because we needed some good management and put it in your department.
So also construction inspection, and finally the parking utility. I am primarily responsible for the parking utility.
Do you do tax assessing?
No, tax assessing is an independent function regulated by the state, and in fact virtually controlled by the state.
So you pay the employees, pay the bills of the township, but I know you also collect taxes as well.
That's right. The collector of revenue is, and the collection of taxes is one of the responsibilities we do.
Do we collect taxes for everybody or just for the township?
We collect taxes for the township, but with that collection is also for the county government, the school system, and the independent fire districts that are, there are 3 of them within the community. So we're the central collector for all of those agencies.
And how much money is that every year?
It's just short of $47 million that we totally collect.
It's a lot of money, but we don't keep that.
We don't keep it. We keep less than $9 million of it for municipal functions, and the rest of it is dispersed to the county, to the Board of Education, and to the fire districts.
Is there a regular schedule for that disbursement?
There are regular schedules. The Board of Education gets paid monthly because their functions are ongoing. The county is paid quarterly as we collect on a quarterly basis, and the fire districts are paid quarterly.
Now, let's talk a little bit about the regulation of municipal finance in New Jersey, because you've taught me, I know, that New Jersey is not like many other states in that the state government has a heavy role in municipal finance. How about describing that role and what kinds of controls they have on municipal government?
Okay, the strong role that the state has is through the Division of Local Governmental Services. And that comes out of the Depression and a lot of collapses on some financial obligations municipalities had. In the 1930s, they wrote the local budget law, the local bond law, the local property and buildings law, as well as a number of other laws that regulate local municipal governments. And they determined that municipalities would operate on a cash basis. If you have the money, you may perform the service. If you don't have the money, you can't operate and the budget's not permitted. Now that's in contrast to New York State, where they can anticipate money that they haven't received and then borrow to operate the government. In New Jersey, you don't run the government on a deficit basis. Local governments are run on strictly a cash basis.
Is that anticipation of borrowing what got New York City in trouble?
Well, New York City found that they had a lot of receivables on the books that really weren't receivables. They should have been paired off. They were very soft revenues, and that's what got them in trouble. And that's what's kept even a city like Newark that has a lot of social and demographic problems very healthy. Just last year, Newark ended the year with, I think, was $12 million of fund balance. Unheard of for an urban city to end the year with that large of a cash surplus.
What happens if you don't do what the state says?
Well, first of all, the state, you must submit your budget to the state. And if you elect not to do what they say, they won't approve your budget. And if you argue with them, they simply send in a management team and run your town.
That's a pretty heavy penalty.
That is a very heavy penalty because they come in and they determine who's going to do what and when and how bills will be paid, and take the managerial and decision-making authority away from the local people.
So, from what you said, any debt that a municipality in New Jersey incurs has to be for something other than operating expense.
That's right. It has to be for capital equipment or materials that have at least a 5-year life expectancy. That means that if short-term items like automobile, police cars cannot be bonded, they have to be paid for cash on the year that they're put into service, and because they do not have a 5-year life. Now, a piece of heavy equipment or a sanitation truck or building of a road has more than a 5-year life expectancy, and you may pay for those like you would a mortgage on your house by accessing the capital market.
Let's go back to the collection function for a minute. We collect $47 million a year. There's certainly a period of time before that's paid out as the money comes in. What happens to that money? Do we just sit on it, or what do you do with it?
Every day, we operate our day and close it before noon. And so our day doesn't run like the normal 24-hour day does. It closes at midnight. We close at 12 noon. That money's taken to the bank, and every penny that comes in the form of cash or checks is reconciled the day it's received, is put in the bank. Now, it used to be that we could get the float of the immediately by investing that. With the banking changes that occurred 2 years ago in the Tax Reform Act, the banks are much more stringent, and we have to at least give them 24 hours before we can start investing. But every penny of that is invested from the moment that's eligible.
How is it invested? We speculate in the stock market, or penny stocks, or what?
No, we buy gold and silver and all those fun things. That's, again, part of the regulations out of the 1930. And the permitted investments have not kept up with what are some of the secure things in the marketplace. But every banking institution in the state is certified as eligible for deposit of municipal funds or not. And so we can't deal with any bank that has not been certified. We can buy certificate of deposits with banks, and we can buy any federal instrument as long as it's not longer than a 12-month instrument. So you can buy Treasury notes, but Treasury bonds or Treasury bills you can't buy because they have a period longer than 12 months. You can also buy any of the temporary paper that a state agency might issue. You may also deal with local banks for repurchase agreements, which means that if we have cash on Friday and we're not going to need that money until Monday or Tuesday, we can buy a repurchase agreement, loan the money to the local bank, with them agreeing to purchase it back from us on Monday or Tuesday when we need the cash, and invest, so we invest all our money over the weekend.
What do they do with it over the weekend?
Well, if you drive them down Route 18, you'll see a lot of stores, and they have a heavy cash appetite. And those stores need that money over the weekend to process and do commerce. And so the banks will make loans to many of your commercial operations, and that's what they are looking for the cash from the town for. It doesn't all stay within the community, but that's part of the beauty of the economy. When we have money that's sitting idle, there's some segment of the economy that needs that cash, and we make it available.
You mentioned earlier the Jamesburg Park problem that existed when you came to East Brunswick. Maybe you could talk a little bit about the problem generally, not so much about Jamesburg Park, but
Okay.
what was behind that and what do we do about it?
Well, it came out of the Depression era, that prior to the Depression, there were land speculators that came in and asked for a subdivision. They subdivided a large tract of land into 13,000 small lots, and they were referred to as summer lots. And they would bring immigrants living in the tenements of New York City or Philadelphia by the trolley to East Brunswick and say, there's your future home. Just picture it. Now, all it was is a wooded lot, but they said, you can picture building your house there, and you can buy this lot for $2 down, and we'll send someone through the neighborhood and collect from you at 25 cents a month. And you'll pay for this. And they sold the same lots over and over again, and they subdivided again and subdivided again so that there was multiple deeds out on many lots. And then the stock market crashed, and that subdivision just set fallow. And from the 1930s until I came in '74, a number of times it was going to be resolved. And every time the local government asked the attorneys to do it, they said, do you know how many searches we have to do and how many county records we have to deal with? And 13,000 lots. So it became a big expense.
The fact that it was sitting fallow and nobody cared about it, why did the town care about that?
Well, for a few years, the assessor had taken it off the tax rolls as if it didn't even exist in East Brunswick, and therefore there was no county tax, and we were not losing state education for delinquency rate. But someone reported to the county back in the 50s and said, hey, they've got a couple thousand acres that's not on their tax rolls. It was put on the tax rolls. It reduced our credit. It was a non-collectible on the tax rolls each year, and it was running up a poor credit rating for the municipality as a whole. And by cleaning that up and by making those lots either pay taxes or clean up those liabilities, it gave us a better bond rating and a better approach to just our total financial picture.
What happened with the county taxes that were levied against that property?
The county taxes must have been paid. We had to pay those because the person of last resort is that the schools get their money first, the next county gets their money second, and if there's not enough money left, the municipality must absorb the shortfall. Now, when you had 13,000 lots on the books that weren't paying any taxes, the municipality was subsidizing those other levels of government at a real expense.
You mean everybody in town who was paying taxes had to pay in order to meet the demands of the county and the school district?
That's correct. The assessment placed by the school district and the county was being picked up by the local residents, and there was no return, and there was no health to the tax rolls.
Well, that says that having properties in the town on which taxes are not paid is bad.
That's correct.
And if it's bad, what do we do about it? What do you do about it?
Well, one of the things we have done is to work on the collection rate. And we collect 98.2 or 3% of all taxes levied. The 2%...
Why not 100%?
Well, because we happen to live in a dynamic community that as much tragedy as there's some people who sell their property and in the process of closing elect not to pay the taxes until the new fiscal year. There are other people, and it's very common for the case, is that divorce causes constraints within the family, and those people that are having domestic problems simply during the time of dispute don't pay. Now, there's a penalty for that. There's a penalty for anyone who doesn't pay, and they pay the penalty, so it's not hurting the local residents because we charge the maximum amount of interest on those people that elect not to pay because of some extraneous reason.
So what happens if they don't pay, ever?
Well, if they don't pay ever, we, first of all, at the close of the fiscal year, we give them notice. And if within 6 months they haven't brought their accounts current, and the fiscal year closes on December 31st, if by July 1st they haven't brought their accounts current, we sell a lien against their property. That lien goes ahead of any bank mortgage, it goes ahead of any other form of lien within the state. And if within another 6 months they haven't paid, it's now been 1 year, we have the right to foreclose in rem. Foreclose in rem means that you give them notice and say that if you don't pay within 45 days and you file that with the state superior court, then you own the property. And we took a lot of property away from delinquent taxpayers that were simply speculating in East Brunswick.
Does that mean that we go around our black cloak foreclosing on widows and orphans?
Well, we elect not to do it to widows and orphans. Even the governing body has made a policy that for those people that are unable to pay their taxes and that live in their house, we do not foreclose. But for commercial properties and for industrial properties and for vacant land that will not hurt the individual, the strictest enforcement is applied.
Okay. Let's turn to capital formation, as you phrased it earlier. I know there's been a lot of talk about the debt position of the township and is that wise and so on. Where do we stand with our indebtedness, and how does that compare to, say, the state's requirements for East Brunswick in terms of how much debt could be incurred?
Okay. Well, the town is multifaceted, and so when I say the debt for the town, the Board of Education is an independent body, and they have debt, total debt of about $6 million. And if someone were to say, okay, that's a piece of debt that you have. The Sewerage Authority is an independent agency, and they have one sole function, which is to collect sewer. They have debt of a little less than $2.5 million. So you take the 6 and you take the 2.5 and you have 8. The Parking Authority has some debt. The water utility has some debt. And then there's overlapping debt. We're part of the large county. And the county has some debt. And when you put together a financial statement, you say that we're a certain percent of the county, and so we are responsible for a percent of their debt. And then you come down to the general municipal operations, which are health, public safety, and welfare, which are primarily the functions you and the governing body are responsible for. And the total debt that we have outstanding in long-term bonds is $6 million. And then in short-term notes is $9 million. Now that represents a little more than 1% of the assessed valuation within the community. So that 1% of the net worth of the community is the amount of debt we have.
And what kind of guideline does the state or regulation does the state impose? Okay,
the state says that you may have debt limit, debt ceiling, or you do have an absolute debt ceiling of 3.5% of your assessed valuation. So instead of having $15 million worth of debt, we could have debt that would be close to $50 million, over $50 million, without any problem or without any state regulation. If you exceed that debt ceiling, then you're required to go to the state and ask for permission, and you may exceed the debt ceiling. Now, a number of growing communities are in that position where they're over the debt ceiling. But East Brunswick is a very healthy community because it has a low level of per capita debt.
When we have long-term indebtedness, when we have bond ordinances to build the library or the senior citizen center or a new water line, how is the money realized from that?
Okay, the funds are, first of all, the project is determined to be a public purpose project, as you named, the senior citizen center of the library. And then once the amount is determined, we approach the capital market, your large banks in New York City and your brokers, and borrow from them. And we borrow the money to pay for the project and then set up a retirement schedule, a repayment schedule. And that repayment schedule then is honored and followed, and we pay back over a portion of the useful life of the project. The library, which we're sitting in now, has a useful life of 40 years. The indebtedness on this is paid off over 16 years. The bonds were sold in 1978, and within 16 years it'll be completely paid for. It won't be obsolete, and it'll be debt-free.
Why would you do that? Why not stretch it out to 40 years?
Well, when I first came here, and shortly after you came, we found that some of the officials prior to that had taken that philosophy. And the very first well that was drilled in East Brunswick for the water utility and put into service was put into service in 1951. And the bonds to pay for that well were sold for 40 years, which is 1991. I can tell you that that well does not function. That well has been re-drilled twice and has been replaced and recapped, and that people today are paying for that well long after its effective useful life. And so there's an effective useful life, and there's a legal useful life. That was a poor decision back then, to stretch the debt out as far as you can. It's passing on from the current generation the indebtedness to your next generation. It's really putting a burden on your children that they shouldn't bear.
But doesn't it have a low interest rate?
It has a low interest rate, but it's very expensive to pay for something that you don't use. It's like the person who might buy a car on 5 years worth of payment, and he finds out he's worn the car out in 3 years and still has 2 years to pay for it. Becomes a very bitter pill to pay for, even though there are low monthly payments.
That's true. That's true. Now, I know you have in your hand a prospectus, which maybe you could talk a little bit about this. This is a prospectus on East Brunswick and its financial situation. Is that not correct?
That's correct. That's one that was just issued on November 21st when we refinanced some water bonds, $1,450,000 worth. We sold those bonds for their period of 9 years, and the interest rate is 5.8%. One of the unique things about East Brunswick, and part of the reason I like being here, is that we do all of the official statements in-house. Normally that would be contracted out to one of your official printing firms and your financial advisors and would cost the town $10,000. But the staff within the finance department takes that on as an ongoing responsibility. And we're the only town in the state that does produce an official statement in-house.
Why do we do this? Is it some requirement that we do it?
Well, for two reasons. It costs us $300 to produce that, as opposed to having a financial advisor do it for $10,000. So there's a high degree of savings. Secondly, the capital market, the interest rates that are charged, are very sensitive to what happens in Washington, what happens with oil prices, and so we want to have the data current and in file with all of the financial houses as well as Moody's so that we can get a good rating. By being able to do this in-house, we're able to enter the marketplace with a 2-week notice. The state law requires advertisement in the certain financial publications, but that means if we see rates are starting to increase because of high inflation or because of some tragedy, we can get into the market, lock in our position, and not be hurt by the fluctuating marketplace.
Now, we do this in-house, but why do we do it at all? Is there some requirement that it be done?
Yes, there are federal requirements on disclosure, and we have an obligation to disclose all the facts and all the good points about East Brunswick as well as all the liabilities. And within this are all the liabilities that we know that East Brunswick is faced with. Any large insurance claims that might be filed against us are listed here. Any negative parts about East Brunswick are listed here, and it's called due diligence. We have to comply with interstate commerce regulations on, and Securities and Exchange Commission regulations on notifying any potential purchaser of an East Brunswick bond or note the exact financial condition of the community. If we present false information, we open the town up to lawsuits, and myself as an individual and you as an individual who signed this official statement open us up to lawsuits as having given what is called blue sky. Don't worry about it, it's going to be good tomorrow, the sun's going to come out, buy our paper. If that occurs, the town can be sued very heavily.
This is an interesting document, I know. If a resident wanted to get a copy of it, where could they go?
They can come to my office or to the municipal clerk. We always have plenty of copies on file because it is one of the most informative documents on the town. And it's written in everyday language, so that it's not written in a lot of legalese so that people won't understand. It's written so that the average person can pick it up who may be interested in investing in East Brunswick.
Let's talk about bond ratings for a minute. I know that that's something that the public looks at and that political people particularly are fond of touting when it's good. What is our bond rating, and what does it mean for East Brunswick and its residents?
Okay. Well, our bond rating is a AA bond rating, and the very best bond rating one can receive is a AAA, so that we have the next to the highest bond rating. Now that means that the degree of risk for the amount of money put out is very low. Interest rates are determined by how much risk will I have and how long will I have to invest my money. If the risk is low and we shall sell our paper for a short-term period of time, then we get low rates. If you have a bond rating of a BAA or a BBB, that means it's a very risky piece of paper and the community might not be able to honor its commitments.
Now, but with the controls of the state government in New Jersey on municipal spending and having to approve municipal debt and municipal budgets, it would seem that every community in New Jersey ought to have the highest bond rating.
It would seem logically to have that, but because we don't have an instant society, if Town X had a poor bond rating and they sold bonds and then they didn't make their payments, they didn't pay the bondholders, by the time that default notice was given to the town, the state found out about it, the state came in and levied taxes to pay for it, it could be 12 to 14 to 18 months. Meanwhile, the bondholder is sitting out there, and that's part of the risk factor. The state can't move instantaneously, and therefore there is a risk, even though those super controls are there, and the state will ultimately make good on the bond for the bondholders. If you're looking for your paycheck and it's due on Friday, and I say, well, Bill, I'll give it to you in 4 weeks, just hang with me, you might not be too happy.
That's right.
And so that's the same with the bondholders. If they're looking for the money on a fixed date and a town really messes up and can't give it to them for a year, they're not going to be happy. And that's the type of events that occur in the marketplace that we want to be attuned to and to maintain a good reputation so it doesn't occur here.
Now, I know that not too long after you came to East Brunswick, you got our bond rating upgraded to a AA, if I remember correctly. But we're not a AAA.
That's right.
And why aren't we, and what do you think it'll take to get to AAA?
I think it would take annexation of South Brunswick and maybe North Brunswick to do that. We were one of the first residential communities in the state to get a AA rating. And we've maintained a very strong credit report that Moody's issues on us. But we have a 70% residential tax base, and we have a very small industrial or commercial tax base. And because of the composition of the tax base, even though it's very healthy, people pay taxes, and we have one of the best collection rates for the last 9 years or 10 years. We've collected 98% of our taxes, and then the next year we've collected the 2% that were outstanding. So we've always collected. They look at it and say, you're a super community, you're able to do all those things, but you don't meet our criteria. You don't have enough of large industries in town that are the bread and butter in case there's a heavy depression or something.
Oh, interesting. Well, I suspect if that's the criterion, we may never have a AAA.
I'm afraid we have worked on that, and we've insisted, as you know, twice now since you've been mayor, we've asked them to come out and look at our community and get to know it. And they've come out and they've said, gee, everything you say is correct, but here's our checklist. And they're inflexible is the way I've seen that occur.
Might the Tower Center complex tip it in the direction of the AAA?
That is the type of Class A rateable that will help. The other thing is that because of our reputation in the marketplace and because of what we do with official statements and communications, we sell almost like a AAA community. So that the rates when we sell bonds or notes, our rates are very attractive. Quite often, AAA communities will be paying higher interest rates than we will because they don't approach the market as we do.
So your position in the market is much more than just the bond rating given by one of the rating agencies.
That's correct. Familiarity is very important. If the account executives that are selling paper have never heard of your town and they're trying to sell your paper to somebody, they say, well, I think this town is. But if you keep them up to date and you communicate with them and you meet with them periodically, they know who you are and they know what they're selling. And then they sell that, and they're willing to, because they sell faster, they're willing to work for a less margin. We always approach the direct marketplace in New York City. And when we take bids, I find out what they're reoffering it for. And if they're working for $1 a bond, that's too much. That's traditional in the marketplace. But because we have such a good reputation and our paper always sells out the same day, we want them to work for 50 cents a bond. Mm-hmm. And they will do that on an annual basis. And so that we get good rates and we sell our paper at less cost than many communities. Matter of fact, I don't want to sound, I don't want to sound conceited, but we do well in the marketplace.
That's good. That's good. There's a lot of talk about the new tax law affecting the municipal bond market and municipal debt operations, if you will. Maybe we could talk briefly about what those impacts might be and what you see as the implication for East Brunswick.
I think that the Tax Reform Act of 1986 will go down not as a benefit to taxpayers, but as a real sore point. It's a shifting of costs from the federal government to local property taxes.
Let me just interrupt for a minute. Do I recall that you, I know you're active in the Municipal Finance Officers Association. You did participate with them in trying to convince the Congress not to put these provisions in. Is that not
That's correct? I spent a lot of time lobbying with them and with the Public Securities Association and with the Investment Bankers Association.
Okay,
so I've followed it from day one, mm-hmm. and all of the drafts. But what happens is that they have restricted the ability of local governments to issue municipal paper, bond anticipation notes and bonds. And they've said that it's a privilege that the federal government is giving you, and therefore you must follow these regulations and guidelines. Now, when the Constitution was first written, it was written to protect the federal government from the stronger states. And they have completely turned that around, and now the weaker states, and particularly the municipalities, need protection. They have restricted the amount of issues we may make. They have said that these are the only things you may sell bonds for, and they have called them a new term called private activity bonds.
What kinds of things are permitted as public purpose bonds?
Well, suppose that there was a need for a new high school in East Brunswick, and the citizens said that we don't like the way the schools run the cafeteria. Our students come home and say we want better food. And in designing the high school, they hired a restaurant service to run the cafeteria. And if that cafeteria required more, to build that, required more than 10% of the money used for the school, they'd say you can't build that school with tax-exempt bonds, you must make that taxable. You no longer can build that high school with that cafeteria because it's private purpose. You're lining the pockets of some private taxpayers. Regardless of if they could operate it cheaper, if they would provide better food, and if it would make the students happier, that still is a private activity bond. They took that local decision away from the local community and said, we in Washington are going to make those decisions for you. They also said that if you decide that you want to not sell your notes, if we have notes outstanding, they're due on the 23rd of January, and if the 23rd happens to be some date that's celebrating, we want to sell a few days early, like the 20th or the 19th, and we would happen to earn a few dollars on those couple of days, they say, you go ahead and invest it, but give us the money. We have to send the few dollars to Washington that we would earn, and that's called arbitrage on advance fundings, even if it's advance funded 1 day or 30 days, so that they have taken what was normal, a little bit of cost to cover the operations of printing the paper and selling it. They've said, you may do that, but send us all the money.
Us being the U.S. Treasury.
Us being the U.S. Treasury. They have regulated the municipal bond market so tightly that it is going to cost maybe 25 to 50 basis points more.
What's a basis point?
A basis point is 1/10 of 1%.
Mm-hmm.
So that if I talk about 50 basis points, it means it costs an additional 0.5% interest every time we would issue. And that's the impact that's happening out there. In fact, they're trying to take the tax-exempt privilege away from governments, and that's been a stated position of the Internal Revenue Service for 25 years. And every time Congress talks about tax reform, they pull a package off the shelf, say, Don't let governments, local governments and states issue tax-exempt paper. Make them compete with General Motors and all of the big corporations in the taxable market. And what that means is that IRS would get more money, but local people who build schools and roads would pay higher interest rates. And that's what they've taken the first step, and it's been a big step to do. And so let me give you a classic example, if I may take a minute more.
Certainly.
Garbage is a problem. And suppose that Resource Recovery were determined that it was safe and the county wanted to build a facility to burn the garbage. And when they burned the garbage, the burning of the garbage created steam. The county could let the steam go off in the air and be no problem. But if they said, let's make that steam turn a generator and then create some electricity, the new tax bill says, ha-ha, that's private purpose. You must pay taxes on that, and that's a taxable issue. That's private activity. So you can build the whole plant, you can make all the steam, and you can let the steam wasted. But if you decide to make some energy out of it, it becomes a private purpose, and they've got to sell now tax-exempt and taxable bonds. Now, how many people don't have a garbage problem? And what a dumb decision that is. But that's part of this new tax bill.
Does this have anything to do with the national debt, so-called?
Well, it was called to be revenue neutral, which meant that they wouldn't increase the cost of money they were receiving. But indirectly, they shifted an awful lot of costs to local governments. Even though they're not going to get more money, they've shifted a lot of ongoing costs to local government. And in the overall life of it, in 2 or 3 years, when property tax dollars must go up because of what the federal government did, you're going to see, not only in New Jersey, but all across the country, people saying, what have they sold us? What was the Tax Reform Act of '86? And it's really a can of worms that is going to be trouble.
Okay, I'd like to turn in the time we have left from these lofty issues of how we tax on a national basis to an issue of somewhat more local concern, which is commuter parking. And you have, since its inception, been responsible for managing the parking utility. Really like to talk about 2 areas. One is, and maybe they're the same, at least they're related areas. One is the new parking facility that will be constructed near Exit 9, and the second is the temporary parking that is now being utilized. But before I do that, let's talk a little bit in the overall. How many people park in our facilities every day?
Well, as of the current time today, we sell 1,627 monthly permits. So that means that 1,627 commuters anticipate parking in East Brunswick on a monthly basis for the month of December. In addition to that, we have available for people who want to make day trips, someone who may go to the doctor or shopping, we have currently available 570 day spots. Now, after January 1st, some of those day spots, which are at Exit 9, will close, and we'll have permanently 200 day spots available.
Are those day spots filling up?
Those day spots are about 280 of them are filling up every day. And then on certain shopping days, like on Saturdays and Sundays, and when there's on Wednesdays in New York City, they fill up, and we normally park about 350 people that park on the day, because a lot of shoppers and many people go into the matinee at the theaters.
I know that there are people who question why we're in commuter parking at all, and in particular they say, well, you know, aren't we providing parking for a lot of other people? What is the percentage of East Brunswick residents who use our facilities compared to other communities?
Of those 1,627 permit holders, 69% of them are East Brunswick residents. And the balance, the 31%, come from 34 other communities that surround East Brunswick.
Does it make any sense for us to have parking for 34 other communities?
Well, it depends on how you define sense. But I remember shortly after you became mayor, 3 buildings were being built on Route 18, and some people said, Mayor, you've got to do something about parking. And a citizens committee was appointed in 1975, and they said, we serve as the neck of the funnel. The turnpike is here, you have to get on the turnpike, and people are coming to this town. And either you're going to have them parking in my front yard, or we have to deal with the problem. And the governing body at that time made a choice. let's deal with the problem and let the people who live here on the side streets not have to fight the commuters.
We must get pretty good service also.
Bus service, we have the best bus service schedule in the whole state. When these 1,627 permit holders come, they park their car, and with rare exception, they can walk directly and get on a bus. If they have to wait, normally the most they have to wait is 5 minutes. Now, you can go to many communities, and if you drive to these communities, you see people standing along the road waiting for the bus, and they're waiting more than 5 minutes. And if they have to wait, they're waiting out in the cold. They don't have a terminal where there's bathroom facilities that's heated and there's seats. So I'm really pleased with the service that the commuters have.
At least the frequency of service.
The frequency of service.
I know there have been some complaints about equipment in the past, but I understand that they're on their way to being resolved.
Well, that's a good point, and you may not want me to
That's
say
fine.
it, but the federal government has driven 3 of the major bus manufacturers in this country out because of their requirements. And so we only have 2 companies that really make buses in this country. And when you have 50 states that are trying to buy buses from these 2 manufacturers, it's slow to get buses, and it has increased the cost of a bus almost double in the last 5 years. For what you could buy a bus 4 or 5 years ago, you pay double for that now. And so there's a real shortage of buses, and there has not been a new bus delivered in the state for commuter purposes in the last 14 months.
Now, the township contracted earlier this year for the construction of a parking garage at Exit 9 near the Tower Center complex. And one of the things that people have said to me is, gee, you're paying a lot of money for that. $10 million is a lot for 1,072 or so parking spaces. How do we respond to that?
Well, our response is that it is, if you look at construction costs, it is at the top of the line that we're paying what is, if one would class first-class garages, we're paying the price for first-class garages. But we have, along with that, one of the most desirable sites in the state, because it serves as the crossroads going to New York City. So it will have the best bus schedule of any place in the state. Not only the buses that originate there, but the buses that come back and forth. So it's a difficult spot to build in. Secondly, it's a spot that, based upon the utility and our projections, that can be afforded at less than half of what other places are currently charging. And so that if you measure, well, it's sort of like a price and a promise. What is the promise that's been made, and what's the price? In this case, we asked the governing body to evaluate that. Does the promise equal the price? And the decision has been made, yes.
Now, what kind of facility will this garage be? What are we getting for the $10 million?
It will be a 7-story garage that will be partially enclosed, so that it will be sheltered, it'll be lighted, it'll be heated in parts, and it will be pre-stressed concrete that will not cause water to drip down on you. If you've been into some of the New York City garages and you've seen the rusted beams above you, and if you're wearing a good coat, you've always got to watch that water doesn't drip down your collar. This is a garage that will have a 40 to 60 year lifespan, that it will be protected, and all your rustable parts will be sheltered with concrete so that you won't have rusty water that'll run down and drip on you. It'll be fully drained and fully lighted.
Now, does this mean that a commuter who's parking there that every commuter will be parked indoors?
Every commuter that will be
or at least under shelter?
Well, yes, under shelter. Every spot we have will be protected from the winds and from the elements, and it will be under shelter.
And where would you catch the bus?
You will catch the bus in an enclosed Port Authority type structure, that when you park, if you're on the ground level, you walk directly over to the terminal and enter the bus in the enclosed area. If you're on one of the upper levels, you may walk the stairs down or take the elevator down, and again, the bus will pull inside the facility, and you'll load inside the facility and exit, so that if you're driving in the morning, you'll not have to fight the elements from your garage to the car. When you leave the car, you'll not fight the elements.
How about people who don't park there but who want to drop somebody off?
Okay, the plans have made arrangements for two what's referred to as a kiss and ride, where a spouse may drive up and drop off the other spouse, and they can walk immediately into the shelter and load the bus from inside.
How about if it's in the evening and I'm waiting for somebody to come home?
Okay, in the evening there are spots, I think it's 18 spots that have been designed for people to pull up, and they can sit and wait in the car, or they can wait within the bus terminal, which again will be heated, and there'll be comfort facilities there.
How many parking spaces will there be? Is 1,072 the right number?
1,072 is
Okay.
what the current design is.
Will it be just for commuter parking in the area, the 1,072? Will those be just for commuter parking?
They will be primarily for commuter parking. We'll probably hold about 25 of those for handicap and day parking that will be used. The exact number has not been determined yet, but it's primarily a commuter parking facility for those people that live in town and earn their livelihood in New York City and need a guaranteed spot to park.
And let's talk about rates for a minute.
Okay.
We've heard what we're going to get for the money. How much is it going to cost? You said it would be about half of surrounding communities, similar facilities. But is that going to happen the day that the garage opens, or is that a projection into the future?
Well, the projection is that when the garage opens, the rates will be $1 a day or $20 a month. And so for $20, you'll be able to park at that facility for the full month. That rate is pro forma'd and is based upon our financials, is scheduled to be held until, I think, year 1991. In year 1991, it raises by 50 cents, and so it'll be $1.50 a day. And then, if I'm not mistaken, it's year 1998 that it goes to another 50 cents at $2 a day, and it stays at $2 a day for the projected life of the garage.
Mm-hmm. And how can we do that?
Well, we can do that for a number of reasons. In 1975, when you appointed that Citizens Committee to look into the transportation problem, they made a recommendation that a 21-acre site on Route 18, the former Model store, be purchased. When the bank was approached, they said, "We won't sell you the land unless you buy the building." So you had to buy it all or nothing. That building is a valuable asset, and there's an income stream that comes from that building. The bonds that paid for that were sold for 18 years, and they'll soon be paid down. And the rent that comes from that building is greater than the cost of servicing the mortgage. That rent will be used to subsidize the commuters that will park at the new facility. Now, taking that rent plus taking what income we've been able to accumulate through the investment of the bond funds during the construction period and spreading those over time, the rates will be our pro forma, and that's all part of the financial analysis.
Sounds good. Now, in the meantime, in order to get the garage, we've had to dislocate most and soon all of the people who were accustomed to parking at Exit 9. And by the way, I know that part of that lot is still open. Who's parking there?
Okay, the part of the lot that's still open is open for day parkers and to primarily meet the need for shoppers that go to the city at this time of the year. There's on any given day, there's about 125 to 250 day shoppers that are looking for a place to park and to commute to the city and come back. And so through the end of this year, that's going to be open to facilitate those people. But all commuters and then day parkers will be accommodated at the Transportation and Commerce Center, which is located on Route 18 and Tisus Lane.
And when will the Exit 9 park and ride close completely?
It will close completely on the last day of December 1986.
So that January
5th,
which is the Monday of the following week, no
Right.
one will be able to park there.
That's right. It'll be barricaded off, and it will be used for the ongoing construction of the new facility.
Do you feel that all the people can be accommodated at the Transportation Commerce Center, or sometimes known as the International Market, or Mr. Goodbyes, or whatever?
Well, the plans for the expansion that was done on the 7 acres adjacent to the 21-acre site we purchased.
You referred to the expansion.
Right. Initially, remember I said in 1975, the Citizens Committee said buy this property. The property was then purchased, and it consisted of 21 acres. 4 years after that, the 7 acres adjacent to it, which is a large clay mining pit, became available to the town, and it was donated to the town. That pit has been improved, and additional just short of 500 parking spaces have been constructed there. Now, with those spots, plus the improved layout in the 21 acres, we believe we can accommodate all of the East Brunswick residents and the commuters who are looking to commute from East Brunswick to New York City for the next 18 to 20 months while the construction goes on.
Okay. When the construction is completed, how many spaces will there be in total?
Well, there's going to be the 1,076 spaces at the new facility, and then there'll be a minimum of 1,000 permanent spaces at the Transportation and Commerce Center. And then the 500 that are in the pit, that's a temporary construction. The improvements that were put in there were not put in with the life expectancy of a 20-year. They were minimal expenses, and so those will probably not be available. Mm-hmm. So there'll be a little over 2,000 spots that will be available.
And is it your feeling and projection that that's going to be adequate for the coming years?
Yes and no. It's really difficult to determine what happens in the New York City marketplace. There's been a lot of shifting of businesses from the cities to the more suburban areas around here. If anyone looks at the Route 1 corridor and you see what's happened, and I believe that you're going to find a lot of the people that have worked in New York City shifting to that area. And so our projections are that it's going to be adequate. But it really depends upon if the Route 1 corridor does relocate businesses from the city to that area as projected.
All right. We have some videotape of the permanent and temporary parking facilities at the Transportation Center. Maybe we could show our viewers a little bit about, those who don't go there often, how that shaped up, and talk a little bit about what's there.
Okay.
Now, what are we looking at here?
The highway in the back is the Old Bridge Turnpike, and you're looking from what is referred to as Mr. Goodbye's or Arthur Building, where the bus terminal is, and you're looking out towards the Old Bridge Turnpike. And this is a normal day where the commuters have come in and they've parked. This is suburban transit coming up, and that bus is waiting on a queue line for the commuters to load. Now, this is midday, and the bulk of the commuters have gone to New York City. But services run all day long, so that if someone wants to go into the city and meet their spouse, or if someone comes home early, they're not bound by a rigid schedule. Here is a bus entering the lot from Old Bridge Turnpike and coming down the access road to the bus terminal.
Is the bus terminal in the building, or is it
The bus terminal
outside?
is in the building, and you see that little glass canopied area. That's where they exit, and once they're in the building, if they're waiting, they have to walk the 3 feet, and there the bus is unloading on the afternoon coming back. The route that is shown there is clearly protected by curbs, so that the cars are protected from the buses and from stray cars that might go down. This again is looking from the Tice Lane side of that property across the full span of the parking lot. If they look closely, they can see the light stanchions that are there. This is a fully lighted lot, so when someone comes home in the dark, they're not struggling around to see where their car is. It also adds an additional safety to it, so that it's just as visible at night as it is during the daytime. The site you're seeing now is the 7 acres in the pit that was recently blacktopped and constructed, and you're looking at the temporary facility that was constructed. If you'll notice, if people have colored televisions, they can see there are blue lines with numbers. This is where the people that park on a daily basis must park. The yellow striping is for the people who hold permits, and we give them the premier parking closest to the terminal.
Someone surely going to ask at some point, how about a handicapped person who wants to park on a daily basis? Are there handicapped spaces here?
Okay, we have relocated handicap spaces so that they are close to the terminal in the front and close to the terminal in the rear. And those spots are lined off. There are I think 16 handicap spaces. Again, this is looking at the newly constructed area of the parking lot, and you can see the building on the back of the screen. This overlooks the full parking lot of the new area, and that's what that span is. Again, that's a fully lighted lot. The only difference is that people may see those poles. They're wooden poles for their temporary. The camera has now come around to the Route 18 side of the parking lot. We park in the front and on the Route 18 side. This particular shot you're seeing is the blacktopped area adjacent to Old Bridge Turnpike, and this is for compact cars only. These stalls are striped a little bit smaller than the normal stripe, and there's a sign saying compact cars only. Here's a bus that's going towards the Route 18 side, and you're looking up out of the newly constructed area. You'll see that the newly constructed area is not filled. This was taken shortly after Thanksgiving, and we find that this week is a very light week. A lot of vacation. Even though people have permits, they're not filling the lot up. I would assume that shortly after the first of the year we will see all of these spots taken. The item that you see immediately in front of you is a temporary office and waiting room that was installed for the commuters that park on the Route 18 side. We found that when people must walk more than 1,000 feet, if they're ill or if they have any problems, they sometimes need a comfort station. And so that trailer was moved in and sited and heated so that if a commuter does have a problem or comes home sick, they have access to a telephone, a secure waiting room, and they don't have to walk a couple thousand feet after they get off the bus to find their car. They have a waiting room that's close by. This is the front of the building, and there's Mr. Goodbye's sign. That area you see is for the commercial parking, public parking that's reserved. You can see the yellow curbing and the yellow striping. That clearly delineates what belongs to the commuters. And that if you do not have a permit, as shown on the screen now, you cannot park in the area. The permit is designed to permit ease for the commuter as well as for the attendant. The permit encloses the vehicle registration number, so that if you have a car and you put your vehicle registration number on, we can make sure that that permit belongs to that car. Now, a number of people have two cars, and so we put both vehicle registration numbers on so that they can use if a spouse wants to change cars. But what that does is it doesn't permit one family on the street to buy a permit and then shift it back and forth among the street.
How does one get a permit?
A permit can be obtained by filling out an application and dropping it off at the bus terminal or mailing it to the finance department.
And where does one get an application?
And applications are available at both bus terminals, and they're available in the finance office of the municipal building.
And the fee for that?
The fee for that currently is $10 a month. The fee as of January 1st goes to $15 a month. It's 25 cents a day additional. And so the fee will be $15 a month to have a guaranteed parking spot.
Okay. Well, Lou, thanks very much for being here with me and talking about what you do and commuter parking in the community. I appreciate it, and I hope that it will be informative to the people who are watching.
Thank you. I've enjoyed, East Brunswick people have been very good to me, and I've certainly enjoyed the opportunity to be part of it.
Very good.